The Roman National Museum at Palazzo Massimo is exhibiting a remarkable and unusual exhibition named Mostri, Creature Fantastiche della Paura e del Mito, Monsters, Fantastic Creatures of Fear and Myth. The exhibition features over 100 artworks from 40 different museums that represent fantastical monsters. These works are displayed in a series of gloomy tunnels that are meant to simulate the labyrinth that the Minotaur inhabits. Is there a difference between Roman mythology and Greek mythology? In all likelihood, but to provide a satisfactory response to that issue, it is necessary to investigate the Romans' conception of mythology before they came into contact with the Greeks. Even before they had any kind of interaction with the Greeks, the Romans had their pantheon of deities, which included gods and goddesses as well as some lesser entities. On the other hand, they did not have a particularly large canon of myths or stories in which they embedded their divinities. Worship to the gods was intended to be an integral component of the Roman standard day activities. After coming into contact with the magnificent works and epics of the Greeks, the Romans finally concluded that it was necessary to incorporate their gods and goddesses into mythology. The Romans, to make their gods and goddesses fit into the mythology that had already been formed by the Greeks, frequently changed the names of the gods and goddesses that had been created by the Greeks and replaced them with their own. This, in many instances, also included radically altering the character of a few of these gods and goddesses. The same is true for a few of the monsters that are mentioned in Roman mythology. In addition, once the Romans began to link to the mythology of the Greeks, they added some of their myths and monsters to the mix, which further expanded the mythology. Roman mythology's menagerie of fantastic beasts. Caucus. Caucus was first mentioned in Roman mythology by Virgil in his work, the Aeneid, and by Ovid in his book, Fasti, which explained Roman festivals and the origins of the gods. Both authors contributed to the development of Roman mythology. They claimed that Caucus was a gigantic dragon who breathed fire and resided on the Aventine Hill, which was one of the 7 hills that made up Rome. It was believed that he was the son of Vulcan, the god of fire and the forge. Even though he breathed fire and caused problems in the community where he lived, he was an exceptional shepherd. In the version of the myth that involves Caucus, Hercules had just finished robbing Geryon of his livestock when Caucus decided to rob some of them from Hercules. He led the cattle away by their tails so that Hercules could not locate them by following the hoof prints they had left behind. Nevertheless, the remaining cattle caused a commotion as Hercules and the others got closer and closer to Caucus's cave. Hercules was able to pinpoint the location of the cattle by listening to their calls as they moved around inside the cave. Caucus was put to death by Hercules, and the animals were rescued. Faun. The Romans borrowed the concept of the satyr from the Greeks to create their version of the faun. On the other hand, the picture of the Roman faun is where we get the concept of the satyr that we have today. In ancient Greek art, satyrs were typically shown as human beings with the ears and tails of horses. The Romans depicted fauns as human beings with the horns and legs of goats. This figure would endure in Western culture and would subsequently be used in portrayals of Satan that were created by Christians during the Middle Ages. In Roman mythology, fauns are spirits of the forest that enjoy having a good time, dancing, and playing the flute. Basilisk. Pliny the Elder was one of the first authors to introduce the basilisk to Western civilization, and he is credited with being the first to write about it. In his Naturalis Historia, which is an encyclopedia on, among other things, the animals of the world, he defines the basilisk as a serpent that lives in North Africa, in the Greek city of Cyrene. He says that the basilisk was discovered by the Greeks. It was able to kill any living thing just by touching them or exhaling its poisonous breath, which could even scorch the ground. This was one of its most prominent abilities. The basilisk measured just 1 foot in length and could slide along with its head held high. Because the only thing that could hurt it was the scent of a weasel, the only way to kill it was to put it in a hole that smelled like a weasel. In the end, the two would end up killing one another. Many people believe that the idea that cobras and mongooses are inherently hostile to one another gave rise to this urban legend. Pliny the Elder also wrote about a creature that he called the Ethiopian Pegasus, and he referred to it in his writings. It was a winged horse, similar to its counterpart in Greek mythology. According to Pliny, however, it also had horns similar to those of an antelope. making it an animal that could only be found in Ethiopia. Gorgon. It's possible that the Gorgon, an ancient mythological creature whose glance could turn people into stone, is the most well-known of all the mythological beasts. The name Medusa is still well-known, making her the most well-known of the original Gorgon sisters. More than 2,000 years of uninterrupted fame. Be ready to come face to face with her in game. Gorgons are vicious monsters that had the head of a woman, the body of a snake, and several smaller snakes entwined in their hair. Gorgons can be found in Greek mythology. In addition to being able to perform a range of lethal poison spells, their melee attacks have the potential to inflict poison that lasts for an extended period. Naturally, they also have a spell called Petrify, but for reasons that should be self-evident, it can only be cast for a finite length of time at a time. Half bull, half men. The half bulls, half men known as the Minotaur are a truly intimidating sight to behold, with their flared nostrils, cruel horns, and size that dwarfs even the stoutest of Roman heroes. They are known as the Minotaur. They are equipped with a wide range of crushing melee attack moves, including the ability to smash, toss, and gore anyone foolish enough to oppose them. Even the gut-wrenching war cries of these brutish monsters have been known to inspire such a lack of confidence in their adversaries that the battle is more or less already won before it has even begun. There is a rumor going about that, thankfully, some of these terrifying animals are fighting on the side of the Roman heroes who are preserving the fair republic, and you will likely be able to acquire one of these terrifying beasts to command in your squad as you struggle to preserve Rome. Caladrius. According to Roman mythology, the Caladrius is a bird with a snow-white feathered appearance that lives in the palace of the monarch. It is supposed to have the ability to absorb the sickness into itself and then fly away, so dispersing the illness and mending both itself and the person who is ill. The fable of Caladrius was included in the collection of bestiary materials that were used in medieval times. These resources often included a Christian interpretation of the creatures that they addressed. The Caladrius might have been inspired by a genuine bird, according to one popular theory. The fact that it was described as being entirely white with no black on it raises the possibility that it was modeled after the dove or even some kind of water bird like the heron. Lewis Rowe, an art historian, thought that it was almost certainly a white plover. This is compatible with the idea that the Caladrius look draws the sickness into itself. The bird is then said to fly up to the sun, where the disease is burned up and destroyed. Medieval interpretations focused on the diagnostic potential of the bird. If it looks into the face of a sick person, the person will live. If it looks away, the person will die. If it looks into the face of a sick person, the person will live. So this is the end of our video. Do you feel it helpful? Post your valuable response in our comments section below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.